Now, to help us make sense of the convoluted murder case of Jamal Khashoggi is a Middle East expert, Dr. James Dorsey, and he joins us now. He is a senior fellow at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies. Dr. Dorsey, a string of cancellations from global business titans at the Davos in the Desert Summit. Is this backlash against Saudi Arabia likely to get worse, especially since the Turkish president says he's going to go there and reveal the naked truth?
Well, let's keep in mind that the hall in Riyadh today is not going to be empty. It's going to be filled with Africans, Middle Easterners, Asians. But yes, you have two big events today that are almost simultaneous. Mm-hmm. You'll have the opening of the conference, you'll have the Crown Prince, and you're going to have the Turkish president. And a lot is going to depend on what the president discloses and how he discloses it. Let's be clear, the Turks do not have a record of an unblemished judiciary. And so they've put their own credibility on the line. And so whatever assertions the Turkish president makes are going to have to be backed up with evidence, which the Turks say and have been leaking now for 3 weeks.
So where are they getting all this evidence from? Where are they getting the information? They say they've got audio and video recordings.
There can be little doubt that they did have some sort of surveillance within the consulate. I'm not a technician, but I'd be a little bit skeptical about these reports of the Apple Watch that Jamal Khashoggi allegedly was wearing and that was able to broadcast out. What the Turks are saying they have is much more sophisticated. But then over and above that, of course, they probably have surveillance cameras around the consulate. And like in the case of tracking the vehicles, they have CCTV, maybe, for traffic and other purposes throughout the city.
Now, you talked about the summit not being empty, be filled with Chinese, Africans, Russians, Middle Easterners, but ministers from the U.S., Britain, France, with huge defense deals at stake, they've already pulled out. Do you expect Saudi Arabia to retaliate against them?
First of all, yes, Western businessmen, Western media, Western politicians, Western officials have moved out of this. Business hasn't stopped. The Secretary of Treasury, Mnuchin, is in Riyadh at this very moment, and business continues. And what we're starting to see is not only criticism from the West, but also you had now the statement by the Malaysian Prime Minister, you had the Saudi Foreign Minister in Indonesia yesterday, with the Indonesians calling for transparency. And I think that if indeed the Turks come up with a very credible and backed up story, that it will become more difficult for the Saudis. I'm not sure they'll really retaliate. They may to a degree, but the notion that the Saudis have the upper hand in this may be somewhat overstated.
The big question is this: are we joining the dots long enough to indicate there's a link between what took place in Istanbul and the royalty, King Salman, and the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman? Are they linked at all? Because now there's talk that phone calls were made after the killings to Mohammed bin Salman.
Actually, during the killing.
During the killings.
However, at this point, it's an assumption. So what we do know is that the Crown Prince runs a very tightly controlled state, and that the people who were involved in what happened in Istanbul were people who were very close to him. So the obvious assumption is this would not have happened without him. The problem, and on top of that, the Saudis have been very reactive rather than proactive in their response to what happened. So, for example, those that are supposedly were in charge of this rogue operation have not been charged. In fact, one of them has been reappointed, although not to a position with the Crown Prince directly. So the Saudis, the problem with all of this is, would this evidence stand up in court? No, at this point. But there is enough circumstantial evidence, and there's been very little real Saudi response beyond the flat denials and a number of versions of what happened without real clarity.
How do you think Saudi Arabia or Prince Salman can recover from this massive public relations disaster?
It's going to be difficult. I mean, again, when we say recover, his problem really is going to be in the West, and possibly with democracies in the Muslim world. His problem is not going to be with the Russians. His problem is not going to be with the Chinese. So recover is a relative term. But it's going to be difficult, and part of it is going to be having to be credible in terms of the way they respond. And that's been problematic.
But investor confidence has also been shot.
Investor confidence has, I think investor confidence has been mixed for a while. You know, you had last year the massive arrest of major businessmen and members of the ruling family, many of whom were partners, business partners. And you've had a number of other incidents. Now, none of that went as far as wanting to withdraw from Saudi Arabia. And even Jamal Khashoggi's killing, by definition, doesn't mean that they want to withdraw. I think where the difference is, the reputational risk has increased significantly. And if indeed this mushrooms into Western action against the kingdom, it will depend on what the nature of that action is and what the cost of doing business is.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us, Dr. Dorsey. We've been speaking to Dr. James Dorsey from the S. Rajaratnam School.